Everybody remembers the albatross. A sailor shoots a bird, the crew hangs the corpse around his neck. Disaster follows. That's the version that survives in idioms and half-remembered classrooms. But here's the strange thing about Coleridge's poem. Killing the bird isn't what breaks the curse, and it isn't even the emotional center. The real hinge of the whole thing is a moment most readers forget entirely. The mariner, half dead and dying of thirst, looks over the side of the ship at some glowing water snakes. Creatures he'd have called slimy and revolting an hour earlier, and without deciding to, without trying, he loves them. That single unearned flash of tenderness is what lets him finally pray. So today let's talk about the water snakes. The ugliest, most overlooked animals in romantic poetry, and why they, not the albatross, are the secret heart of the poem. First, let's sit with how pointless the killing is. The mariner shoots the albatross, and Coleridge refuses to give him a reason. No hunger, no threat, no anger we can trace. When his shipmates ask why, the poem just doesn't answer. That silence is deliberate. Coleridge isn't writing a crime with a motive. He's writing something closer to original sin, a wrong committed almost casually, against a creature that had done nothing but follow the ship and share the sailors' food. The bird had even been welcomed like a guest, greeted as if it were a Christian soul. And that's what makes the act so disturbing. It isn't villainy. It's the ordinary human capacity to destroy something innocent, for no reason at all. The horror isn't that the mariner is a monster. It's that he's exactly like us on a thoughtless day. Watch what the crew does next, because it's brilliant and rarely mentioned. At first, they're furious. He's killed the bird that made the breeze blow. But then the fog lifts, the sun comes out, and suddenly they decide the mariner was right all along. The bird must have brought the mist. In 2 quick stanzas, they flip from condemning the murder to endorsing it, purely because the weather improved. Coleridge is quietly showing us how a whole group rationalizes a crime once it seems to pay off. And so they share the guilt. That's why, when the curse comes, every last one of them dies, and only the mariner is left alive to suffer. Morality here isn't about outcomes or convenience. The crew treats a good result as proof of a good act, and the poem punishes them for it, hard. Then comes the image everyone knows. The dead albatross hung around the mariner's neck. But notice the exact detail Coleridge chooses. The sailors take the cross from around his neck, the crucifix, and replace it with the bird. That's not decoration. It's a substitution. The symbol of grace and forgiveness is removed, and in its place hangs the raw, physical weight of what he did. He can't pray. He tries, and the words won't come. His heart is, in his own description, dry as dust. Guilt here isn't an abstract feeling. It's a body he has to carry, a thing that rots against his chest and cuts him off from any comfort. Coleridge is making a claim about what unconfessed guilt actually does. It doesn't just make you sad, it severs the line between you and everything that might save you. The punishment that arrives is stranger than simple death. A ghost ship glides up, and on it 2 figures are playing dice for the sailors, souls, death, and a horrifying woman called Life and Death, pale and red-lipped, who wins. And here's the cruelty of that name. Death takes the crew. They drop, one by one, 200 of them, each fixing the mariner with a final curse in his eyes. But the mariner himself is won by life and death. His sentence isn't to die. It's to keep living, alone, surrounded by corpses, on a rotting sea, unable to escape into the mercy of an ending. Coleridge understood something dark here. Sometimes, continuing to exist is the harsher verdict. The mariner doesn't get the clean punishment of death. He gets time, endless, conscious, guilty time, which is exactly what a person drowning in remorse least wants. So now we reach the lowest point, and it's important to feel how total it is. For 7 days and nights, the mariner is trapped on the still ship, with the bodies of his shipmates, who won't decay and won't close their eyes. He's alone with 200 accusing stares. He tries to pray and can't. He looks at the rotting sea and finds it repulsive. He looks at his own life and can't bear it either. He even envies the dead. Everything he sees is soaked in his own guilt, so everything looks foul. This is the crucial setup, because Coleridge is showing us that guilt doesn't just haunt you, it poisons your vision. The whole world turns ugly because the ugliness is inside you. And that's precisely the state the mariner is in when he happens to glance, one more time, over the side of the ship. And here it is, the moment the whole poem has been circling. In the moonlight, the mariner watches water snakes moving beside the ship. Earlier, everything disgusted him. But now, he really looks, and he sees them. Blue, glossy green, velvet black, trailing flashes of golden fire as they swim. They're beautiful. And a feeling rises in him that he didn't summon and can't explain, a rush of love for these living things. He blesses them, the poem says, without even being aware he's doing it. Unaware, that word matters enormously. He doesn't earn this. He doesn't reason his way to it, or perform penance to deserve it. Grace simply arrives, unbidden, the instant he stops recoiling and truly sees another creature as worthy of love. And in that same moment, finally, he can pray, and the albatross falls from his neck into the sea. Now think about why Coleridge makes them snakes. He could have chosen dolphins, or the returning albatross, something conventionally lovely. Instead, he picks the exact creatures the mariner earlier found slimy. The things that crawl on the slimy sea, in his own bitter words. The redemption has to come through loving the ugly, because that's the opposite of the crime. He destroyed something innocent out of thoughtless contempt. He's saved by cherishing something repellent out of thoughtless love. The symmetry is the whole point. And crucially, it happens by accident. If the mariner could have chosen to feel love, he'd never have needed saving. He'd have just decided to be good. Coleridge is saying grace isn't a transaction. You can't strategize your way to it. It comes when you're least performing, when your heart moves on its own towards something you didn't think deserved it. But don't mistake that moment for a happy ending, because Coleridge won't let you. The albatross drops away, yes, and the mariner can pray, and eventually he's carried home. But he isn't free. For the rest of his life, he's seized, at unpredictable times, by an agony that only lifts when he tells his story to a stranger who needs to hear it. That's the frame of the whole poem. An old man gripping a wedding guest, holding him with a glittering eye, unable to let him pass until the tale is told. The blessing of the snakes saved his soul, but not his peace. He's condemned to be a teacher of the very lesson he learned too late. And maybe that's the most honest thing in the poem. Some wrongs aren't erased by forgiveness. You carry them differently, but you carry them as a story you're compelled to pass on. Near the end, the mariner hands us a tidy moral, that we pray best when we love best, all things great and small, because the God who made us loves them too, is the line people quote. And it sounds like a Sunday school lesson. But here's the tension that makes the poem great. That neat moral doesn't remotely account for what we've witnessed. 200 dead men, a curse of endless wandering, a punishment wildly out of proportion to one dead bird. Many readers have felt the moral is too small for the nightmare it caps. And I think that gap is intentional. Coleridge shows us a universe far stranger and more terrifying than any lesson can domesticate. Then has his broken narrator reach for the simplest comfort he can find. The tidy sentence isn't the poem's truth. It's a shaking man's attempt to make sense of the unbearable. So here's what I'd carry out of this poem. We tend to think redemption is something you achieve, a debt you pay off, a checklist of good deeds. But Coleridge buries a quieter, harder idea in his water snakes. The mariner isn't saved by suffering, though he suffers enormously. He's saved by a single involuntary flash of love, for something he'd been taught to find disgusting. Grace, in this poem, is what happens when you stop performing goodness and simply see another living thing as beautiful. You can't fake it, and you can't earn it. You can only make yourself the kind of person it might visit. And maybe that's the challenge Coleridge leaves us with, 2 centuries on. Not to love the beautiful things, which is easy, but to catch yourself, unaware, blessing the slimy ones. That's where the albatross finally falls. Thank you for watching, all the way to the end. If this gave you a new way to see the story, subscribe to Between the Chapters. A new literary deep dive lands every week, and I'd love to have you along for the next one.